reaction video. Today we're gonna react to a video by Young Dong Reacts, the man himself. Shout out to him making this video. It's called The Gen Z and Millennial Masculinity Crisis. Now this is definitely common in today's society, and I definitely can relate this to myself. I'm going through these phases of what it's like to be a man and having these beliefs and kind of finding the answers to life as a male. So let's see how we can react to. I'm gonna put this at 1.5 speed, or kind of like less or more, to kind of short the video, just to not make it long. But let's get to it.
Masculinity crisis, a generation of hopeless men. Video by Cole Hastings. Okay, yeah, apparently there's a crisis going on. What's going on? Oh no.
Masculinity is in a crisis. All around the globe, creators in niches like self-improvement, the red pill, or anything else related to these categories are talking about the war on masculinity.
What? Masculinity being in a crisis is like saying dental hygiene is in a crisis. It's like a completely, like an individual internal thing, you're masculine.
Well, I think back then, there wasn't, such a confusion of masculinity. Back then, being a man was like, okay, you work for a job, you get married, have kids, live a basically kind of like normal lifestyle, But like now, since the rise of social media and the rise of, multiple paths instead of going down the same path, okay, having a job, getting married, and having a house, and the fact that inflation goes up and Gen Z has no opportunity to kind of live the same life as the boomers did, now it caused a shift in masculinity, and I think it's going to be a big problem in today's society, and if it doesn't change, it may get worsened from there on.
Masculinity. You know what I mean? Like no one's stopping you from brushing your teeth and flossing. You feel me? No one's stopping you from being masculine. Why is it a crisis exactly? What's going on?
I think there is such a crisis of masculinity.
Feminism has creeped into the mainstream like this.
Man spends his day lying in bed surrounded by screens.
You're so stupid!
And I have to admit, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of what they say. But hear me out, because what I'm suggesting isn't to disband masculinity completely. I just think we need to upgrade the way we harness its power. When I was young, I went through a similar crisis that many young teenage men are facing these days. I had absolutely no clue what it meant to really be a man. I'd see heroes and male protagonists in movies like The Dark Knight, Gladiator, and even Taken being portrayed as an unstoppable force of nature, packed with brawn, grit, and muscle. And I'd wonder if that was what I needed to aspire to be. My everyday life wasn't filled with much of the same, though. In school, most of the teachers I had growing up were women. And what the man I was closest to, my father, was really good at was encouraging me to play a bunch of sports, like soccer, baseball, and hockey. Those things fueled my competitiveness and made me feel like I was tackling big accomplishments, as I thought a man should be. But when it came to the other, more personal...
Well, I feel like, kind of more of a kind of fake and societal issue where we see the perception, we see it in movies that we thought true love is gonna be just like, the Disney movies. But I think now, seeing all these different movies of actors, portraying this masculine character, I feel like we as young men would kind of assume that, hey, if we become this character, then we're gonna be considered masculine, we're gonna be considered being a man. In reality, that's not just the case. And I feel like, especially young men or adolescents or teenagers going through this developmental stage, I think what often happens is that their influence gets kind of being taken advantage of, and their kind of influence is okay, straight for social media, straight looking for the answers. I feel like since we didn't have that kind of healthy relationship with our parents, we instead go to social media. So, I mean, that's what I also went through as well. Me starting my self-improvement journey at, I think 14 or 15. I think 15 definitely. And after that, I kind of started grinding, and, that's why I kind of got here.
Realms of my life, I was left extremely confused. I didn't know how I should treat or talk to women, battle through hardships, and especially manage my emotions. By the end of middle school and all throughout high school, I found myself associated with the more popular guys in my grade. A group of rowdy, in-your-face partygoers who like to funnel several beers at once, be degenerates, and hook up with tons of girls. And because of everything I had seen portrayed in my life up until that point, along with the fact that I had no real sense of what it meant to be manly, I took part in these behaviors in an effort to feel more like a man. But I have to admit, a lot of the stuff we did back then, I took part in because it actually was just a really fun time. But regardless of this association and the fact that I took part in all these behaviors, I still felt like the least masculine out of all my friends. They would all have such an easy time talking to girls and sleeping with them. They would get into fights at parties when I didn't want to, and they even did better in school and some sports than me. And
testosterone, bro. I'm trying to tell you, y'all hear me talk about this show all the time, bro. Honestly, if you just live your life in a way that maximizes your testosterone output, a lot of it.
I mean, yeah, us men, we would naturally kind of like produce testosterone, nowadays with, with food, plastics, especially dealing with kind of like negative addictions, it would cause our testosterone to go down. And I think that point of like being able to fit in, yes, I kind of face that in my part of life too. I feel like, doing the parties is kind of like great, but for me, like, it's only once in a while.
Shit just takes care of itself, man. Like you're not an anxious person. You just aren't utilizing your balls properly. You're just not making enough testosterone. There are other things as well that are at play that are fucking you up in your head. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe try quitting caffeine, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, you need to lower stress. It's not even about the caffeine. Everybody reacts to caffeine differently. I'm not trying to tell you, oh, this is the answer. What you need to do is identify, be honest with yourself, and ask yourself, what are the things causing me anxiety in my life? These are things that are raising your cortisol. Cortisol is antithetical. Cortisol production is antithetical to testosterone production. Both require the use of cholesterol, which your body makes naturally, but also you get cholesterol from your diet. But most of the cholesterol that your body utilizes, I believe, it actually produces. Regardless, point is your body takes cholesterol and turns it either into testosterone or into cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. It's needed in the body. So it wakes you up in the morning. It gets released during fight and flight situations. It makes you alert. It makes you sharper. However, it is antagonistic to testosterone production. Testosterone calms you down, bro. You just don't give a fuck, bro. You know what I'm saying? And so you need to be optimizing your sleep.
Yes, of course, stress is bad for you. Yes, we would need cortisol in our bodies. Too much will cause, Cushing syndrome, and for some kind of severe cases, you may gain weight. You may not be able to get sleep. Of course, your testosterone levels will go down. Definitely, environment plays a big factor. If you're dealing with like kind of like constant fight or flight situations, I feel like your body would be so used to producing cortisol, it would be very bad for your body. So yeah, definitely kind of agree with it. I know it's not like a part of the topic, but of course, definitely important.
You need to be lowering everything that could possibly be causing stress in your life. You need to, like, I deadass got these, bro, like blue light block. This is how seriously I take this shit, man. And that's why I'm perpetually unbothered and unfazed, nigga. Not the glasses themselves, but I'm saying like these are blue light blocking glasses. I'm not saying it's a magic pill. I'm just saying I'm doing every little thing I can to help me get better sleep. I throw these on once it's about 5 p.m. and you know what I'm saying, helps me to fall asleep better at night. Maximize your sleep, man. Maximize your sleep. Eat healthy, train, work out. Sleep is really the biggest thing. I ain't gonna lie to you. But there are other little things that will fuck up your sleep, like caffeine, certain medications. And so, honestly, if you can do that.
Yeah, sleep is definitely important. Definitely my situation going to college and having to study a lot. I started prioritizing sleep a lot. I started quit drinking caffeine and started taking advantage of getting as much taking naps as much as possible, and then like waking up refreshed. And I invested in the melatonin gummies, and the return on investment is drastic. I feel like it helped my sleep a lot, and also limit fluid intake. I recommend not drinking a lot of water, a lot of fluids before bed, because you could wake up in the middle of the night and then you could, like I said, having to pee out the excess urine. So, yeah, good stuff.
If you can fix your testosterone levels, bro, don't worry about microplastics and all that bullshit, bro. I drink out of plastic bottles all the time. Like, the big things are sleep and your stress levels. And of course, those two things are very closely related. You want to be going to bed early and you want to be getting your 7 to 8 hours of sleep. You feel me? Yeah, a lot of this other shit sorts itself out once you fix that, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Nothing made me feel like less of a man than not being able to get hard for almost an entire year with every girl I tried to sleep with in college. All of these traditionally masculine traits I was trying to embody, dominance, aggression, competitiveness, and power, were only leading me to feel more depressed and less masculine because I could not fully embrace them. And in a world where 3 out of every 4 people that choose to stop living are men, we have to ask this crucial question. What parts of traditional masculinity are making men no longer want to live, that make men feel worse rather than better, and what parts of traditional masculinity genuinely help men live better lives for themselves and those around them? There isn't going to be a straight answer that will apply to every single man out there, but today I'm going to try and tackle this question as comprehensively as I can. First, we need to identify what masculinity even is in the traditional sense. Masculinity is a set of traits or attributes that are regarded as characteristic of men, but you can see anyone exude masculine characteristics, not just men. We've already gone over 4 traits commonly associated with masculinity, which are dominance, power, aggression, and competitiveness, but I want to combine and add these to 3 core masculine traits that I want to go over in detail. And those 3 traits are strength, assertiveness, and leadership. So let's start by going over what is
I mean, with this kind of like traits, I feel like the reason why definitely higher death rates in men are definitely the question of masculinity, and it's because they're looking for the answers externally. You know, in a society standpoint, of course, people would think, like, okay, if you don't have strength, assertiveness, or leadership, you won't be seen as a man. You know, and it's definitely also kind of a cultural thing as well. You know, especially in with families, and I don't, and I feel like it wouldn't be such a problem back then because you know it was just it was just universal. There was kind of like no contraindicated of what being a man is back then. You know.
Okay, I'm already going to modify one of these, but I feel like the other two seem pretty all right.
As the golden trait of masculinity, strength. And I'm not just talking about physical strength. I'm talking about being mentally strong as well. If you're a frequent viewer of my channel, it's likely you've come across these reject modernity.
Yeah. Testosterone is huge on this as well, by the way. Testosterone is huge on this in terms of getting your mental strong. Yeah.
The embrace masculinity videos on YouTube. They all follow the same formula. Start by showing some weak men doing modern things like eating too much junk food, putting on dresses on TikTok, or simping over Twitch streamers, followed by what you should really be, which usually displays men lifting weights, being firefighters, athletes, or competitive fighters. All activities that require some sort of physical prowess. I'm not gonna lie to you, a lot of these videos are incredibly inspiring. When I put one of these on before my workouts, then blast some hardstyle while pretending I'm one of those icons from the video, it gives me a huge boost of motivation and strength. But as with any masculinity message, I think the whole idea behind being stronger can be misconstrued and also just be toxic. You see, physical strength is usually determined by a couple key factors: testosterone and muscle. Something positive that I think these videos indirectly underlines is the importance of bringing to awareness the declining testosterone rates in men for the past few decades. Yeah. Testosterone is something that is closely intertwined with masculinity. It makes men feel more energetic.
I mean, by looking at this graph right here, there's definitely a lot of factors. One factor is how, of course, the production of technology and plastics, which kind of prevents kind of men for going out as much, and you know, in our everyday lives we use technology, and it would not kind of encourage men to go outside, and my I mean, yeah. I was definitely gonna say the other factor would be, of course, like the society roles and like how, you know, oh, men shouldn't do this, men shouldn't do that, and then of course the feminism. I think yes, feminism would be also be a factor, especially the feminism kind of march back then. So it's definitely another factor. So.
Men for the past few decades.
Yeah.
Testosterone is something that is closely intertwined with masculinity. It makes men feel more energetic, it makes them want to go after what they want, and it makes them generally happier. There's no doubt that the decline in testosterone rates could be one of the reasons for depression being on the rise in men, as low testosterone and being depressed are highly correlated. This indirect intention that one should boost their testosterone and have more strength in—
See, I told y'all I beat this nigga to the punch. It's all in your, I'm not gonna say it's all in your testosterone, bro, but testosterone is a huge part.
Bigger for life from these masculinity videos, I believe is a big positive. Good, clean dieting and consistent exercise is appearing to become less and less valued, at least in American culture. But let's dive deeper into this whole idea behind being physically strong. A lot of these videos only depict people who are extremely muscular and massive. For a young, impressionable teenager, this is what the ideal man is for them. Screw anything else. If they can just be massive and muscular, then people will respect them for how manly they are. But I disagree with the idea that having a more muscular physique makes you more of a man. If you are pursuing a strong aesthetic body because you want to be able to tower over people and dominate them and have people be intimidated by you, you are subconsciously telling yourself that you are afraid to have any vulnerable points. You are only pursuing a better body in a pursuit to cover up your past traumas and insecurities and suppress them at all costs. Because many men are taught to do just that. This is why you can be the most physically dominant man in the room, but still be the weakest in every other area. And when that is the case, you are just as fragile as the man who has no—
I mean, like, definitely, like, of course, another society thing is, like, men shouldn't kind of express their emotions. Only women can. Women, I think, is okay. Women would be like, oh, it's okay. But, of course, men, people would say, oh, you don't, you shouldn't express, your emotions. And, of course, I can definitely see this a lot of times where, of course, like, people, like, there would be one dude, looks the jacked person in the room, but inside he was dealt with some childhood trauma or kind of like a lot of problems that he wasn't able to express and kind of like cope and something to talk to, and in a talking, having contact with the therapist. And I feel like with that suppression and with that anger, it would never resolve the problem. It would only go worse. And I think this would kind of relate to the rise of kind of incels, where there would be a lot of young men would think like, okay, life is unfair. Why are they doing this? And they would definitely go to this very dark path, which can be very concerning.
Muscles and the same amount of insecurities. This is a part of traditional masculinity that I feel needs to be updated. I feel like a lot of young guys stop themselves from pursuing
muscles do not equal masculinity. That's a fact. You know what I'm saying? Like, having the biggest muscles, that ain't what it's about. Definitely having muscles, being strong, it helps a lot, right? Having bigger muscles, especially when you're doing weight training, you're moving heavy weights, that helps with testosterone production. But also, body fat produces estrogen or something like that. I'm not like a fucking fitness expert or no shit like that. I just know there's a link. There is a link though, a direct link between how much body fat you got and the amount of estrogen you produce and the amount of testosterone that you got in your body. And estrogen isn't bad. Everybody needs estrogen, but it's having the right amount. And having more muscle on your body actually makes it easier for you to not get fat. It's like the easiest way to keep your body fat low is to have a lot of muscle, because if you eat a big meal, then all that sugar gets to go into your muscles as opposed to being turned into fat. And so there are plenty of ways in which putting on more muscle does actually equate to you being more masculine, being more manly, and having more testosterone. But don't think that it's like this infinite scale where the bigger and bigger and bigger you get, the more Chad and more macho and masculine you get. Nah, it tapers off. You know what I'm saying? It tapers off pretty quick.
I mean, of course, as me as a young adult, trying to kind of bulk up and trying to look jacked and shredded, I can try to definitely relate to it. Of course, it would be an endless cycle, I think it's definitely kind of like a lot of flaws in self-improvement where, there would be times where like, okay, someone would go on self-improvement, they would think it's infinite, infinite, infinite. Of course, leveling up is definitely real, but trying to level up all the way, trying to chase this desire, and I feel like that, sometimes it can be unrealistic. It was kind of like solo leveling. Sung Jinwoo kind of like leveled up. Okay, he struggled through life, and then he tried to level up, and then it was kind of to the point to where like, okay, it kind of got very unrealistic. So,
bro, you just want to get, you know what I'm saying? You just want to look athletic. Once you get to the point where you're built like your typical high school or college athlete, I would say you've probably more or less maxed out in terms of the benefits you're going to get from muscle growth in terms of, making you more masculine. If you want to get bigger than that, then, do it, but don't do it for those reasons.
Something that they would enjoy, that would be a benefit to their lives, such as being a singer, a writer, or something typically associated as a more feminine career, because they think society would value them less and it wouldn't be masculine of them to do so. Now, as a man, you'd want to assure that you are at the very least physically competent. If you have no sort of strength or ability to move things and be agile and you're obese, you should want to do something about it, because it's probably contributing to your lack of energy and happiness. But you shouldn't have to strive for this very unrealistic ideal that's often portrayed in the media or online in order to feel masculine. Whether you're a soccer player, engineer, programmer, skater, writer, singer, or the like, you are no less of a man than the guy with six-pack abs from the Reject Modernity videos. And luckily, a few of these videos actually portray men in other roles other than being super dominant, muscular, and masculine sometimes. Oh, but Cole, why do you lift weights then? Well, it's engraved into who I am at this point. I love the way it makes me feel, I like the challenge that comes with getting stronger, and I want to be able to carry all my groceries from my car in one trip. Oh, also not to mention the fact that a lot of these Reject Modernity, Embrace Masculinity videos are blatantly homophobic and LGBTQ phobic, which is something I really don't with. Putting down people like that in that way makes you much less of a man than more of it. Now, let's talk about the even more controversial aspect of strength in men.
I think it would also kind of like represents an insecurity. They would exploit these insecurities in these young men, and then of course they would try to make profit off of it and sell a course.
Mental strength. This is one of the most widely misunderstood parts of what it means to be masculine.
I would say this is an even bigger benefit from testosterone than the physical strength. Like, I would say having higher levels of testosterone, the way how it benefits you mentally, is to me far more valuable and far more important than how it benefits you physically, for sure.
I remember when I was a teenager and I was out to dinner with my parents and my sister, and we were talking about how my sister was working through some sort of relationship issue. My mom was suggesting seeking some sort of help, and I was agreeing, and we ended up talking about how great it is that there are so many resources now for those struggling with their mental health. As a response, my dad said something along the lines of, we used to just tell people to get over it, and it worked too. This, I feel, encapsulates a part of traditional masculinity that has caused decades of generational trauma in men. When men are taught that being mentally strong means being able to bottle up your emotions and get rid of them somehow, they are more likely to be depressed, hopeless, commit violent crimes, and be verbally and physically abusive. The problem is, this aspect is really confusing.
Yeah, like suppressing your emotions it never works. It's like energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred. And I feel like it can apply the same thing as emotions. the emotions can produce. But if you can't kind of use that energy, that emotional energy, into kind of a coping mechanism or something that's positive, instead you bottle it up, it's gonna stay there. It's not gonna go away, and when that builds up over time, it's gonna cause an explosive anger. I mean, I definitely experienced that too. You know, of course, with the family trauma, and of course, with back then saying, "Hey, like get over it." I think I can definitely relate it to as well. With, of course, my parents who kind of like immigrated and moved here to the U.S. for more opportunities. Of course, they kind of brought on that family trauma because they experienced it themselves. And so, okay, if it worked for my parents, okay, it should work for me then.
Confusing. We're told that society will take advantage of and disdain men for being emotional, and we're also taught that women don't want an emotional man. So if we're not supposed to show our emotions, but the very fact that we don't show our emotions makes us more out of touch with ourselves and therefore leads us to do negative things, what is a man to do? The answer is not as clear as I'd like it to be. The paradoxical thing that I've realized is that in order to establish more emotional control and maturity, and therefore be less emotional, you must find a way to feel and express your emotions somehow. Now, knowing when to do this is really the most important part. There are some situations in which people will take advantage of you if you're being super emotional. For example, if you're super depressed and repeatedly crying about how you hate your life in front of your girlfriend or some girl that you're interested in, and that woman has not yet established a strong bond with you, or her emotional intelligence and maturity is quite low, then yes, she's probably going to lose attraction for you. But if you're with, let's say, one or both of your parents who you know won't judge you, and you just need to let it out and get everything off your chest, then you should absolutely do it. Because nothing gets resolved or healed by suppressing it, and that's what a lot of us men were taught to do in order to cope with our more emotional side from a young age. Again, I think this is where traditional masculinity falls short. It's very disappointing to me to still see so many teenagers and adults making fun of men for showing their emotions. Part of it definitely comes from these beliefs about what it means to be a man and what's acceptable as a man that's been passed down for generations in society, but part of it is also due to most people still being controlled by their more primitive brain areas, which is something I'm going to bring up repeatedly throughout this video. When humans were fighting for their survival every day, they knew that if they stuck to the people who could be fearless and stoic in the face of danger, they'd have a better chance of surviving. And so people naturally gravitated towards and were attracted to the people that looked like they had their together at all times. Many of us are still functioning on that same primitive level, which is very advantageous for survival, but is lacking in empathy and self-discovery. We need to start to get to the point as a society to break past these more primitive level brain areas, allow men to speak up and get the help they need from other men or anyone else without being so heavily judged.
Man, this is a part I really can't even help you, gang. You might gotta go talk to a therapist or some shit. Like I'm at a place, bro, where I
mean, like, if you tried everything that you could, and then like it I think if it doesn't help your how you live your life and your coping mechanisms, I think you could try investing your money into a therapist, and I feel like that's also going to be the best way. Of course, I went to it as well, and it kind of helped a lot. So yeah,
I'm at a place where I've just like outgrown this shit, bro. Like just being emotionally distraught. Like I feel emotions in the moment like anybody else, you know what I'm saying? Anger, frustration, anxiety, all of this shit. But like it's very fleeting for me. Emotions, I don't carry emotions with me. I don't hold on to shit. And I've just gone to this place by following this principle called living from the end. It just occurred to me that it's not the in the moment emotions that ever fuck you up, right? Like it's not you getting momentarily pissed off when someone cuts you off in the road, or somebody's disrespectful to you, or you got some really bad news and you're sad, or you know what I'm saying, those fleeting emotions, that's not the shit that cripples people. It's when you are carrying and holding on to emotions for extended period of time, right? Like hours, days, weeks, months, and all of that is just a result of you telling yourself a story over and over again. There's that, and of course there's physical shit, right? Now you can be anxious, you can be depressed because your sleep is fucked up, because you're on too many stimulants and your cortisol levels are too high, because you have some kind of, you know what I'm saying, fucked up brain chemistry going on, and for those reasons it's good to talk to a medical professional. However, a lot of times people are also fucked up because of a story they're telling themselves over and over again. There's things that people are sad about, for instance, that if they were to hit their head and get amnesia, their depression is now cured. You know what I'm saying? They've just forgotten about it. And that's what it is. People need to learn how to let shit go. And I've found that you gain the ability to let shit go when you adopt the ideology or the mindset or the understanding. You come to the realization that your reality is shaped by what you focus on and what you believe to be true, and the emotional place that you navigate life from, the perspective you navigate life from. So for instance, the guy who has the frame of I am a winner, for instance, regardless of whatever is happening in the present external experience that is life, regardless of whatever is happening, you are operating from the position of I am a winner, right? I overcome. The external will just confirm what you already believe to be true mentally. You know what I'm saying? And every obstacle, you just perceive it as a means to the end of.
Yeah, definitely kind of agree. I think social media kind of like definitely influence a lot. Of course, what we see and of course kind of what we hear kind of influences us, and it's definitely, like I said, vulnerable to kind of young adults. But I think when you're an adult and you kind of realize it later on, it's like, I think looking back and hey, like I kind of made this mistake, and I'm glad you know I'm glad I kind of like noticed it later on and I realized it later on. You know, yeah, it's definitely cool to build muscle. I know I'm saying, hey, like never, you should never do this, never do that. I encourage, of course, self improvement, build muscle, of course, do good. Be social, make a lot of money and stuff, but it should not be kind of the core purpose in life. Of course, we would have kind of more of a mentally, emotionally, spiritual side of ourselves. That, of course, we would. Everyone has um, a specific purpose. Of course, like in terms of purpose, it's not universal to everyone. And I feel like with the boomers and the older generation, something that like they couldn't understand. Um, as now, since we having the latest technology and the latest research of mental health.
Coming out on top as the winner, as the one who overcomes. And so I live from the end of I overcome. So for instance, right, let's say I get into an argument with a friend and I just ask myself, what in my perfect world, what is the end of this interaction? Like at the end of the day, what are we? Are we still friends? Are we no longer friends? Like how does everything pan out in the end in my perfect world, right? And then I just live life as if it's already that. You know what I'm saying? And of course, the finer details will, will reveal itself on how you should behave. But like you get into an argument with somebody, if you know that in the end, everything is going to work out and y'all are going to be good, then there are certain things you're just not going to say, right? There are certain things you only say when you think that there's a possibility that we are on a path to this relationship being over, to this friendship being over. And so you might say certain things that you wouldn't say if you knew at the end of the day, y'all are going to be friends anyway. Does that make sense? So yeah, but you can look it up, living from the end, right? The concept. And this is something that becomes more intuitive and clear the longer you do it. That's why I say, like, as I'm listening to this guy talk about this shit, it's like, man, I'm so far removed from this, what he's talking about. But to try and articulate exactly how one gets here mentally, it's like, I don't even know how to really do that. But that's how it began for me.
I think also from my perspective, of course, like as I age and kind of like learn through life, I think like maybe this small tiny amount of things, with such as like an argument with a family member or some guy cutting you off in traffic and makes you kind of really mad. If you can kind of like disconnect your emotions from kind of like your reality and your everyday life, and you know how to use them in a more strategic and better and effective kind of way, and of course you would kind of like be emotionally, mentally kind of healthier. And when you realize some things are like, hey, it's not worth it to argue, because of course you have this fixed mindset. They're they're kind of like ignorant. Then okay, let's not argue with this and move on. And I feel like he can definitely make a good point about that.
That's how it started. I adopted this mindset of living from the end. And then, of course, you combine that with the physical, taking care of your diet, working out, getting good sleep, lowering your stress, da-da-da. Everything else just fixes itself, man. But yeah, the key takeaway from that entire yap session is a lot of the things that we allow to bog us down mentally is just a story. It's a story we keep telling ourselves over and over again, a negative, bad story. If you just started telling yourself a different story, or at the very least stop telling yourself that bad story, the bad feelings would go away. No differently than if you just knocked your head and got amnesia and forgot about that shit. You know what I'm saying?
So in short, being mentally strong isn't about showing no emotions or only showing the emotions of dominance, power, and aggressiveness. It's about not letting your emotions be bottled up so that they don't come out in the many different forms of abuse, like bullying, self-harm, and domestic violence, and coming more in tune to your emotional needs that are closely associated with the more feminine aspects of nature, like the need to be nurtured, cared for, and understood. Again, I've found a very paradoxical thing to happen when you start to do this. When you learn to harness the more feminine aspects of your human nature, your ability to battle adversity and tough times actually gets stronger, which is counterintuitive to what we've been taught. Like, dude, it's okay to want a hug. It's okay to not be okay. Find a healthy way to open up about what you're going through, and I promise you, your ability to remain more masculine in the good ways will significantly...
Like even that, like, right? Why do you want a hug? Right? You want a hug because you're telling yourself some fucked up story. That's why you need a hug, right? Like when everything's good, nobody needs a hug, right? You need a hug when shit is bad. And what's the story you're telling yourself?
Of course, like people would ignore the kind of emotional aspect of life. You know, if someone's judging you of expressing your emotions, you know, that's not the right. It's not the right person for you. And of course, I realized that early on in life. But you know, a person's right for you if they're kind of like understand and they're very therapeutic with kind of like your emotions. Of course, in my college life, I started making new friends, and I kind of expressed my goals and my ambitions. And of course, when I felt down, I think I had friends who understand and like they cared about me, and that's when I kind of realized, you know, I think I definitely made. I can tell that I definitely made a good friend. You know, someone who's as trustworthy. Whether as from my high school days, you know.
If you can learn, easier said than done, right? I'm not criticizing you for not being able to do this at a high level immediately now that you've just heard the concept. It is a muscle. It is a skill that develops over time. But if you like just stop telling yourself whatever that story is that is making you sad, then you won't need a hug anymore. I'm not saying needing a hug is bad or wanting a hug is bad or any of that. I'm just saying like I don't experience that. You know what I'm saying? Like I could just live in solitude for I don't know how long, but very long periods of time without speaking to anybody. And I know I would be mentally okay just because this is just a skill. And it's crazy because once you start living your life like this, you have an opportunity to practice this literally almost all day, every day, bro. All these like little micro things, little things happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, somebody gives you a weird look at a supermarket. Maybe you have a knee-jerk negative. Oh, is this person racist? Oh, is this person being a jerk to me? Oh, does this person not like the way I look? Like, what the fuck why are they mad at me? That's one story you could tell yourself. You could tell yourself another story of, oh, you know what I'm saying? That person might be having a bad day. That person might have just had, you know, bad news told to them. That shit ain't got nothing to do with me. You know what I'm saying? Shit, maybe they're jealous of me. They saw me and they got mad how fly I was. You know, like you can tell yourself anything, but just don't tell yourself.
I mean, it's definitely a mental game. It's definitely a mental game, you know.
Yourself a story that results in some negative shit about you. Right? And of course, I'm not telling you to become delusional. You know what I'm saying? Someone tells you, hey, you got some shit in between your teeth. And you're like, no, I don't. I don't buy that story. All right? You're going to use your common sense. Once you start to like play with this idea, this concept, it's very intuitive. Like you'll figure it out because really you've been doing it your whole life. Just you've been doing it unconsciously and more than likely in a way that doesn't serve you. You've been telling yourself all kinds of bad stories. You know what I'm saying? And you can tell yourself good stories that aren't even grounded in your present experience of reality. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, if you're upset about the relationship between you and your parent, you know, you ask yourself, how would I feel right now if I had a great relationship with my mom or a great relationship with my dad? If my parent was like the super supportive person that like was proud of me and was like cheering me on and telling me to pursue my dreams and encouraged my ambitions, how would I feel right now? And then you can just live in that. You know what I'm saying? And the reality is by taking on that posture, that's what will end up being reflected in reality in one way or another. It might not be reflected exactly in that way, but ultimately you will start to experience things in the physical that scratches that itch. So maybe your parent never becomes that person in your life, but maybe some kind of older mentor kind of person appears in your life and all of a sudden they're kind of filling that void of the more mature, older, supportive person. And then all of a sudden you realize, I don't really care if my mom or my dad isn't that supportive because here's this person and they're cool as fuck and they're successful and they believe in me. And for some reason, this is enough. Or maybe it ends up being your parents, you know what I'm saying? You start to become successful because you ain't worried about your parents' approval and you're just focused on the craft. And then you start to actually become successful. And then your parents see the success starting to come and now they can see the vision and then they get on board and now you see what I'm saying? But guess what? It never starts to happen if the entire time you're just focused on the story of my parents don't believe in me and nobody supports me and nobody, you know, thinks I can do it, maybe that means I really can't do it. You know what I'm saying?
Significantly improve. All right, we've tackled the biggest.
And I also feel like that, relationship with the brands is important. As I didn't have a good relationship, I kind of tried doing it, but things didn't work out the way I wanted to work.
Core trait. Now let's move on to assertiveness. If you want to be masculine, you have to assert yourself in this world. You want to be able to say, this is what I want and this is how I'm going to get it. And you never want to be dishonest to yourself and others about what it is you want and need. But the way in which much of traditional masculinity approaches how to be more assertive isn't even really assertiveness. It's much more attuned to being passive aggressive or actively aggressive. You see, on the two sides of the spectrum, we have assertiveness and passiveness. Someone who is passive is a massive people pleaser. They always put other people's needs in front of theirs. They're emotionally dishonest in an effort to not offend anyone. They are indirect with their words and they overly apologize. This is the very opposite of what someone who is competent and emotionally mature, aka a man, does. Next to that is passive aggressiveness. When you are passive aggressive, you are still being emotionally dishonest and indirect with your actions and words, but instead you are subtly making it clear that your rights and needs prevail over others. A good example of this is someone who gaslights you for not doing what they want, and they make you question whether you're doing the right thing or if you're actually a good person. If they say things like, don't you think you're overreacting a little, or it wasn't even a big deal, you're just being emotional, they're being passive aggressive. Again, this is not really something that most people would regard as traditionally masculine, but it gets closer to the line of traditional masculinity in that it puts your needs and wants above everyone else's. Then there's the traditional masculine aggression. This is when you are direct and honest, even if it's inappropriate and severely hurts others. You attack and blame others, and you do whatever it is you want to do and get whatever you want to get at the expense of others. This type of masculine energy comes out when you haven't developed your emotional maturity and you were taught at a young age to dominate over everyone and always put yourself first, which is what a lot of young guys with an
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with this like continuum. Like these are the steps, like passive, aggressive, then assertive. I'm not sure if that's like really the continuum, but okay, I kind of get what he's saying, so let's go along with it.
Father figure are taught. Again, this is coming from our more primitive brain areas that see everything as a battle for survival. But the repeating problem with the primitive brain areas is that although they are incredibly useful, they rarely take into account other people's rights and needs and only optimize for the
This could also definitely give me similar to looks maxing in more terms of human nature and in dating. But
ego's survival.
I think if I can, that will be definitely another topic for the future.
This is not how masculinity should be. True, healthy assertiveness takes into account the rights and needs of everyone involved. The goal is not to ignore and disrespect others, as some teachers of traditional masculinity suggest, but to allow them to communicate and for you to be empathetic of their beliefs and needs while sticking to your own beliefs and needs. You want to be direct and honest, not manipulative and hostile. You want to be flexible but firm with your decisions. So assertiveness is an excellent trait for any man to develop, so long as it isn't done in an overly aggressive, unempathetic way. And by virtue of being considerate and empathetic, dominance no longer becomes the main masculine goal. Now, if we're talking about what women like in bed and whether you should be dominant in that realm of life, that's a different story and varies from woman to woman. Lastly, we have the final core trait of masculinity, leadership. More often than not,
Yeah, when it comes to assertiveness, I would replace that with fearlessness. You know what I'm saying? Like, the more fearless you are, the more masculine you are. Think about it.
As well as kind of being competent. So
The guy who
I think if you're kind of very competent in doing a skill without doing any mistakes, having more issues, I feel like it could increase your self-esteem and it can make you look more kind of assertive because, okay, you can definitely do this skill effectively. Therefore, you're more trustworthy. People kind of rely on you, especially in a job or a career, high-paying career.
fearlessly approaches a chick and just shoots a shot, that's the guy that's seen as very masculine. You know what I'm saying? The guy who fearlessly charges into battle, the guy who fearlessly, you know what I'm saying, pulls up at that three-point line, trying to hit the game-winning shot. Fearlessness, that is what is, I think, interpreted as masculinity. And again, a combination of living from the end and having a high level of testosterone, I think that will take care of that. You know what I'm saying?
Men have this innate desire to want to help to build upon something and improve. We want to feel like we're purposefully contributing and leading something, and if it's not anything outside of us, then at the very least, leading ourselves. It's why the vast majority of self-improvement channels are male-dominated, and I think it explains why around 90% of the people who watch my videos are men. But I have to wonder, how much of men's strong desire to want to be better, improve, and lead comes from a genuine innate desire, and how much of it is societal pressure telling us that that's what makes us a man? The problem with this is it's just not possible for every single person in the world to be a leader. Think about something like an army, corporation, or sports team. Would these things run effectively if every single male on it was trying to lead and be seen as a leader? No, it wouldn't.
I mean, definitely self-improvement is definitely very common for males, and definitely like very, very, very rare cases I would see self-improvement for women. I mean, like, of course we would have other YouTubers, such as, of course, it was Liz or any other female-dominated, where, of course, it would kind of be that kind of red pill version, but for kind of like a female, or those kind of very very self improvement niches, and um, I think it's those areas are would be worse than can be very worse off, and they're definitely their beliefs, their kind of mindset applying that would definitely do worse in the world than, of course, for a male doing self improvement. But that's another.
Of course, men tend to have more qualities associated with being a good leader, like being assertive, protective.
Yeah, I would say leadership isn't even a part of masculinity. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, definitely a more competent, fearless, positive person who believes in themselves, they're going to make an excellent leader. But you can be a follower and still be incredibly masculine. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can be the guy on the team that the captain, he knows he can rely on you. You know what I'm saying? You don't got to be front and center, the guy calling the shots. You can be the guy who called the shots. That guy, he knows that whenever he calls on you to help, you're fucking reliable. That guy's also incredibly masculine as well. So yeah, but guess what? That guy is also poised to be a great leader if he is so inclined to ever step into a leadership role. A lot of guys don't ever really want to have that responsibility or be in that position. They like doing what they do. They like being a cog in the machine because they know they're an incredibly important cog in that machine, and they know that they're very good at what they do. And so that's fine as well. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't even, we can skip the leadership part because I don't even really feel like that's necessary. And so I think with that, we can end the video there, man. So what are the big takeaways from this video? Make sure you are living your life, and I promise you, bro, there is no better investment that you can make physically than doing any and everything to maximize your testosterone production. Even small changes will make a huge difference in the way that you feel. And if, check this out, if during the day you find yourself craving things for like to satisfy you, for instance, you find yourself craving a lot of junk food or craving some kind of stimulation, whether that be in the form of a drug or an activity that goes outside of what you actually would like to do idealistically, I have found that that is a sign that you need more sleep. So that's what you should do. Just say, oh, boom, I need to get better sleep tonight. Let me try and get better sleep tonight. Don't pressure yourself to try and perform at a high level and pacify those cravings by giving into those things. Or if you give into those things, still go ahead and prioritize sleep. With consistently great sleep, especially if you have good nutrition, bro, I'm telling you, you're going to feel a huge difference. So try and lift weights on a regular basis, exercise, try and get sunlight every single day, especially early in the morning. Go to bed early, right? Try to go to bed early when possible and get good quality sleep before 11 p.m. ideally. But if you can be asleep before 10, that's even better. And do things to improve the quality of your sleep. And then look into the concept of living from the end. Do those two things, and I think everything will work itself out. At least that's what I've done.
I mean, definitely summarizes how, of course, the basics of eating a healthy diet and getting good sleep is that. But overall, I definitely kind of like his viewpoint. Over from the video from Cole Hastings, shout out to him again. It's definitely on point, and of course I would agree with Young Don that sometimes you gotta live your own life, and that's what I'm also kind of definitely going through as well, and going through my own life, doing my own thing, what I want to do, and just being myself without putting any filter on, gave me kind of fulfillment and made me much more happier than just, of course, okay, having this mask on. And of course, if you try to be unfiltered, then things bad is gonna happen, and you're doing this for the money. I definitely feel like masculinity is, of course, still universal today, and I feel like a good way to solve it is just kind of trying to get off of social media and start to create your own life, create your own meaning and purpose. It's like, what do you want in life that would fulfill you? What do you want that, what would be your own definition of masculinity, and how would you use that in creating your own life? You know, of course, my viewpoint of masculinity maybe not be the same as the other people's viewpoints of masculinity, but you know, of course, with the, we have different beliefs and cultures, and as long as hey, like, we're happy, we're living our own lives, it's fulfilling us, we don't have any mental health problems, we're able to cope effectively, then great. But overall, definitely kind of a good video. Yeah. Let me know down below more reaction videos, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.